years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I recorded a really simple video called How to Forgive Yourself After You've Hurt Someone. And it was funny because it was for a series I was doing called Wisdom from the Porch. And I sat in the backyard. It was no big set, no seven camera shoot or a smoke machine or emotionally supportive llama. I just sat on the porch and talked. And it became the most watched thing I'd ever put on YouTube, with hundreds of thousands of views and comment after comment still today, 7 years later, with the same private sentence. I hurt someone I love. I cannot undo it. I don't know how to live with myself. Now, this is true not only in personal things, but in business. I talk to so many people who have stories of business betrayal, stories of how relationships have been destroyed. And, just that kind of thing that is so common and at the same time so sad. Sometimes people are cruel and simply, hurt people because of greed. And even in those circumstances, the biggest things are money and sex, right? There's an old Don Henley song. I think it's called Frail Grasp on the Big Picture. And it was his Eagles, actually, not Don Henley, but he wrote it, sang it, or at least was one of the principal authors. But anyway, he talks about we put faith above all, and there's narration. He does that in some of the songs. We put faith above all, except where there's money or sex involved. And an embarrassing but piercing truth. The pain caused by hurting others. Many of those comments, folks seem to be talking about infidelity, but others had lied or stolen or abandoned someone, exposed someone, or left a gigantic permanent mark in somebody's history. The details differed, but the conclusion was the same. Because I did this, I can never be okay again. Never forgiven, never clean, never allowed to lift the head. And the only way through, some people start with this or go with this idea, is to ignore it and just have it be part of the past. But when we do that, it leaves a canker in our souls that just sits there and festers. And then it turns off part of our hearts. And we end up never again being able to be powerful, clear, open, always subject to the somebody's going to know, somebody's going to find out, somebody's going to, expose me. And maybe that sounds righteous, certainly morally serious, but it's also false. So let's start with a core truth. Self-forgiveness, and that's what this is about, self-forgiveness. The whole conversation could be repeated with forgiving others, and that might be another one we do, because that's so important also. Because when we carry anger or grudges around, all we do is poison ourselves. But self-forgiveness is what we're talking about today, begins with truth. You did harm. Whether it was, relationship harm, infidelity, financial harm, stealing, embezzling, cheating a partner, bypassing a non-disclosure, non-circumvent, non-disclosure agreement, whatever it was, you did harm. You did that. So don't perfume it. Don't minimize it. Don't just say, well, mistakes were made, as though a committee of invisible strangers wandered through your life and accidentally committed embezzlement or adultery. I want you to think about that, because when you look at television today and you see people being called on the carpet or whatever it is for past conduct or mistakes, one of two things is going on. One, it's 30 years ago or 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And obviously, the person, the circumstances, the situation has all changed. And stuff that made sense 20 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't make any sense today. I think about my own life, how I was raised, what I was taught, what I thought was okay, and what I now think is okay. Even 10 or 15 years ago, let alone 50 or 60. I mean, I'm 70, so growing up was like 60 years ago, right? And when you think about that, things have changed. And so either it's a long time ago, and maybe it matters and maybe it doesn't, and maybe it's being dragged up just to make somebody look bad and to commit the very same kind of harm, because we think always the end justifies the means, and it never does. And I don't care who you are or what you say, it doesn't. Or, so that's one set of circumstances. Another one is a person did do the thing, and it's not 30 years ago, it was 5 or 10 or 2 years ago or something, and they're trying to use language like, parsing words. Like the famous one is in a president's administration when he said, "I did not have sex with that woman." And he was lying his face off using a parse definition of that sort of thing. So, and everybody knew it was a lie then and since. And so people are trying to do that. So let's set all that fakery aside. I'm talking about the true pain that we have in our hearts when we know we hurt somebody. If you lied, you say you lied. If you betrayed trust, you say it. If you stole or broke a promise, you say it. You own it. Self-forgiveness is not innocence cosplay. You're not trying to prove you did nothing wrong. You're becoming honest enough, maybe finally, that what you did no longer has to hide in darkness and govern you from there. Now, some people are going to say that's impossible and people will crucify you or whatever. You know what the answer is? I don't care. I don't care for me, and I don't care for you. And I have had plenty of things that I tried to hide in the closet, shameful, bad things, dot, dot, dot. And believe me, I did my own share of hiding and pretending and lying and twisting and parsing words and all of the rest of it. And all it does is poison your own soul. So truth is not the enemy of grace. Truth is the doorway to grace. And in saying this, I'm saying that peace of conscience is paramount. Getting the money, avoiding a problem, getting elected, or any of that is not paramount. Peace is paramount. So, again, we're not talking about forgiving others, because that's a whole different conversation. Same principles, but a different conversation, because we hold righteous indignation and anger and, sort of vicious vengeance like it was some kind of a righteous cloak. But we'll set that aside. So let's get to more truth. So the first truth is you can't pretend. Like I said, it's not innocence cosplay. I like that phrase. It's kind of funny. We're not pretending. We tell the truth. The second part of truth is that there are some things that simply cannot be undone. There are harms that you can't fix. That's part of the agony. Like you or me, we can repay money, but I can't erase the fear that's created by theft. I can admit a lie, but I'm never going to give that other person back the years that they believed it. I can confess embezzlement or dishonesty or infidelity, but I can't restore the timeline to the moment before the betrayal occurred. So lost trust creates a mark on both people. The betrayed person learns something about vulnerability they maybe never wanted to learn. and the betrayer learns something about their own capacity they may not want to know. And we can't wish that away. We can't demand the injured person move on. You can't set a deadline for their healing because your own shame has become inconvenient. You can't announce that God forgave you, therefore your spouse should stop mentioning it by Thursday. That's not repentance or making things right. It's spiritualized impatience. Some things leave scars, but a scar is not an open wound, and a mark is not a death sentence. So when you are in a position, this is what I've learned, and it was such a big part of my life that I wrote a book called Forgiveness. No surprise, a journey of courage to a place of freedom and power. And in that book, I dealt both with forgiving others and forgiving yourself. For me, the self-forgiveness was harder, maybe because I had such a negative opinion of myself and I was so angry and destroyed in myself about who I was or what I'd done. Today, my rule is joyful, and it's I forgive everyone, everything, all the time. I hold compassion, grace, and patience for everyone, for everything, including myself. And that isn't pretending stuff away, but it is a conscious choice to understand we're on a life journey and that everybody does what they do. And it's not my job to carry out justice or hold negative energy, drink the poison. And that doesn't mean that, there aren't consequences. If somebody embezzles, maybe there's legal proceedings. If somebody does certain things, maybe there's laws that are broken, and that needs to happen. I'm not pretending that away. Again, back to what we're talking about today, which is forgiving yourself when you have hurt someone. So there are 3 things that I've discovered that I'd like to share with you, and maybe they'll be helpful, and I want to offer you them as an invitation. The first rule, after you've been honest, I've said being honest, and don't minimize, don't mince words, don't change the meaning of things, don't play games, say the truth. Because if we don't start there, the other person isn't listening anyway. Because all they're thinking about is you're minimizing, you're not pretending, you have no idea how bad that hurt, you have no idea what you did to me, you have no idea how embarrassing that was, or how much financial hardship it was, or how you ruined my business or my life. That's all they're thinking. So until we have said the words, the truthful, unvarnished words, nobody's listening. So that's first. And the steps to take after you do that is fix what you can. Apologize plainly, answer honest questions, return what was taken, correct the lie, and accept the consequences. Make restitution, give the other person room to choose what their own personal safety now requires, emotional safety or whatever. We can't turn the apology into a sales prezi for my redemption. I apologized, read 2 books, changed my socks, and attended a webinar. Why are you not over this? I know, I don't think anybody said that, but it doesn't count. Someone else's healing is not a customer service transaction. A clean apology says, I did this, whatever the this was, in plain, clear language. I harmed you. I lied, I cheated, I stole, whatever. I am sorry. I will do what I can to repair it. What will that take? And maybe they don't know. I understand that you control what access, trust, or relationship is available now. Like if you've betrayed someone in business, they're probably not going to want to do business with you again. Or maybe it'll take a while. So asking the question to them, I understand that you now control. I'm not going to insist. You control whatever access or trust or relationships available now. You can't control whether or not they believe you or forgive you or stay or do anything. Your work or mine, again, this is for self-forgiveness. It's just truth, repair, and transformation. The second part of it is change who you are. Because after you've completely told the truth and fixed what you can and acknowledged that they are now in control of all aspects of that kind of relationship, you don't control that anymore. You can decide you don't want to do anything, but you can't push access into their heart or their world anymore. But the second part is to change who you are, because if I did something or said something or stole something or lied about something or cheated with something, I was the kind of person who did that. That's who I was. And I can make whatever nonsense excuses I want, but that's who I was. So part two is change who I am, because I now have to have the opportunity to become someone who would never do that again, would never live like that, never be the person who betrayed, lied, cheated, stole, whatever it was. I am not that person. I was. And the consequence of that is this thing that I did. And now I have changed who I am. I am not that. You may not believe it. You may not want to do anything about it or with it. That's fine. But I am not that. And that is not just words. It's not saying what I intend to do. It's not what I'm promising in the emotional heat after being discovered or slapped around. If the betrayal grew in secrecy, then that means I have to build a life of transparency. And if business or relationship or trust is going to be restored, everything has to be completely transparent. No arrogance, no hiding or anything, because otherwise it goes right to the place of something's hiding. If the betrayal grew out of some kind of entitlement, then I need to practice humility. If it grew in some kind of an addiction, then I need to get the serious help and build structures that don't depend only on heroic willpower. In other words, there has to be some evidence for the person that I'm trying to fix what I can and change who I am, so that they can see that if I ever want to even pretend to have a relationship. And even if I don't, other people who may or may not even know about that, those things will be great blessings also. If the problem grew out of my own cowardice, then truth has to become the new way of life. And that's like telling truth, even in small ways, before giant lies show up. If something grew out of resentment, then I got to quit using unspoken anger as permission for hidden revenge. The deepest apology, and I want you to hear this, is a changed being. I need to become someone who is safer with truth, power, money, sex, attention, promises, and other people's hearts. You redesign, whoever redesigned the internal architecture that made the harm possible. I got to become somebody else, which includes, building different habits or boundaries or support or accountability or whatever. And this is the work of the sovereign architect. I'm not denying the building fell down. I study the collapse, remove the rotten materials, redesign the structure, and build a life that can hold the truth. And the third thing, besides fix what you can, change who you are, is add good to the world. Because when I have become a different person, then I am now the person who doesn't add negative, betrayal, lies, theft, or other things to the world. I become a person that adds good to the world. Not as groveling, not as payment for my right to exist. I'm not buying forgiveness with charitable points or goody two-shoes, but I'm refusing to waste the lesson. That other person who's learned the cost of betrayal may become fiercely loyal. The person, me, if I've known dishonesty or addiction, I may become a sanctuary of truth for others and help somebody else find the door. I can't go backwards and become innocent of the experience, but I can go forward and become wise. I can add good, I can serve, I can create, I can love. I might have the opportunity to teach what I've learned where it makes sense. I might have the opportunity to protect others from the pattern. I might become a person whose presence now reduces harm and increases light. My past will remain part of the story, but it doesn't remain the only thing that the story is focused on. Now, here's some things about that. When we stay in self-loathing, and this is one of the hardest things for me, staying in self-loathing doesn't make restitution. Staying in self-loathing doesn't change who I am, and it certainly doesn't add good to the world. So if I say I can never forgive myself and I stay in that agony of twisting and self-loathing, all I'm doing is wasting my gifts and talents. I'm even wasting the lesson that I learned. This is one of the most important truths about the whole thing. Hating yourself doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the person you hurt, and it doesn't help you. It may feel like punishment or proof that your remorse is serious, but self-loathing doesn't rebuild trust. It doesn't undo the lie or repair a marriage or restore the money or heal the person you harmed. And here's the key. All it does is remove your or my remaining power from useful service. Stuck in an endless cycle of self-hatred or guilt or shame, all that does is mean I can never be of value in the world. The lesson I could have learned remains unlearned. The good that I could have done remains undone because it's locked up in that shame. You bind enormous energy up in that shame. Concealment, vigilance, collapse, and repeated self-accusation. You rehearse the event, feel the old charge, tell the old story, and then you reinforce the identity or the idea, I'm disgusting, I'm irredeemable, I destroy everything. That's not humility. It is being possessed by the past. Healthy guilt says, I did wrong, I got to fix it. Shame says, I am wrong, and there is no meaningful response except punishment or disappearance. One path goes to repair, and the other leads to paralysis, secrecy, self-sabotage, and sometimes recreating over and over again the very behavior you claim to hate because you've already decided that's who you are. So the invitation that I really needed and why I wrote the book on forgiveness, stop making shame your religion. Some people worship at the altar of permanent unworthiness. As funny as that sounds, they wake up, review the indictment, light the incense of regret, and perform a daily ritual. I am bad, I am ruined, I do not deserve joy. And then they call this some kind of accountability. It's not. Accountability moves you. It repairs, it changes behavior, and it accepts consequences. Shame circles the same grave and calls the walking spiritual depth. It's not. Self-loathing can even become a strange form of self-absorption and selfishness. Everything is still about my guilt, my horror, my unworthiness, my need to be reassured. Meanwhile, the useful questions stay, unanswered. What can I repair? What must I become? And what good can I create now? The goal is not to feel nothing. It's not to pretend it didn't happen or to wash it away. Remorse matters. Grief matters. The pain tells you that love and values were violated. But pain's a messenger. It's not a lifelong vocation. So that's the process of self-forgiveness. And when you fixed what you can and changed who you are and set about adding good to the world, and this is not gonna, this is it, as you have done these things and you have already fixed what you can, and you have changed who you are and you have set about adding good to the world, you're done. Forgiving yourself is critical. Why? So you can have light and share it with others. Now, here's one thing we need to talk about. Sometimes people confuse self-forgiveness with someone else's forgiveness. They may never forgive you. And what if they never do? Well, they may not. And that's brutal, but real. The person you hurt has agency. They are not required to participate in your redemption narrative. They may hate your guts forever. They may never trust you or speak to you again. You have to respect that. That's their choice. But you can't let their inability or unwillingness to walk a path of healing change who you are and what you do. Because if you do, you're handing away your ability to do anything good in the world. I made these mistakes. They were terrible. Therefore, forever, I am prevented from doing anything valuable, redemptive, helpful, or good in the world. That's nonsense. Somebody's refusal to forgive does not give you permission to beat yourself up forever or return to the old behavior. It doesn't require you to remain spiritually frozen forever. If you give them the magic wand of "you're not okay till I say so," you're hostage to their response. They may have a different road to walk. They may not be ready or interested or willing. That's not yours. You can't control that. You make amends because it's right, not because it guarantees some kind of reconciliation. You change who you are because truth requires it, not because that change produces a desired outcome, because maybe it doesn't. Sometimes people choose to restore a relationship. Sometimes it is rebuilt slowly. Maybe it becomes stronger, wiser, and more powerful, more truthful. Sometimes the relationship ends, but our transformation still has to continue. We don't get to choose the consequences of what we did. Okay? We don't get to control what someone does or doesn't do or say, or whether they accept anything or not. What we do choose is what the consequence creates in us. Now, there's one myth I want to talk about, which is the myth of the permanent black mark. People speak sometimes as though some kind of betrayal, no matter what it is, creates an eternal black mark that no power can remove. The mark exists. History is history forever. But to say the mark can never be healed is to say it's to deny grace itself. It's to say that God can create worlds, sustain life, redeem souls, and somehow can't handle your catastrophe. That is a remarkably inflated view of your mistake or sin or betrayal, however you describe it. It is an inflated view of that. The story of that gal, Corrie ten Boom, illustrates this. She forgave a former concentration camp guard, and that truth destroys our small arithmetic. We assume some debts are larger than the divine capacity. We may not be able to repair their soul, but God can, and they have to choose that, and that's their own path. And we don't get to control that. We can't say, "I'll never be okay until you tell me I am." That may take forever. They may deny access to divine grace. We can't control that. We can't assume, or it's a mistake to assume, we can, but it's a mistake to assume that mistakes or debts are larger than divine power and love. It's just not true. It doesn't make terrible things acceptable. It makes grace bigger than any atrocity. If another human being can forgive something enormous, maybe you and I can stop pretending that what you did wrong or I did wrong is the one thing in the universe stronger than God. Kind of silly when you say it out loud. And the other truth is you are not your worst day. We can't define ourselves or other people by their worst day, week, month, or year. And neither should we define ourselves that way. The worst thing you did is evidence of what you were capable of in that state, context, and level of development. It is not proof that that's the only thing you can ever become. You are responsible for what you did. You are also responsible for what you do with that truth right now. Did you hide? Did you repair? Did you collapse? Did you redesign, build, serve, and live differently? The old act is fixed in history, but your identity is not. And so the practical decision is just this. Tell the complete truth without a decoration. Fix what can be fixed. Accept what cannot be restored. Give the injured person freedom over their response. Change the internal and external architecture that produced the harm and then add good to the world. And then stop using self-hatred as proof that you care. If the old shame returns, name it. Wow, shame is here. It's trying to turn a behavior into an identity. Ask what is true now. Ask what is the action you take now. Then take a millimeter or a meter of clean movement. Keep the promise today. Speak the truth today. Serve today. Let your body accumulate new evidence. I'm no longer living as that person. Now, one changed choice doesn't rebuild trust. Thousands of changed choices can. So how do you forgive yourself after you've hurt someone? Don't pretend it didn't happen. Don't call wrong right. Don't demand the other person restore access, trust, or relationship. You, me, we tell the truth, fix what we can, change who we are, and add good to the world. And then refuse to make self-loathing your lifelong religion. You're not honoring the person you hurt by destroying the rest of your capacity to love. You're not serving God, and neither am I, by insisting that his grace is too small for our past. We're not protecting morality by declaring that a human being who has done wrong can never, never, never become useful or trustworthy or whole again. The wound matters and the consequence matters, but the transformation matters too. So this is an invitation. Design a life built on truth. Live that ultimate life because it's possible. When grace isn't merely something we talk about, but something we finally allow to reach deep in our hearts. So you did harm. You're still responsible, but you are also not beyond the possibility of redemption. See you tomorrow.